Thank you, everybody, for joining us. My name is TJ Kelly. I am the CMO with FansRaise. We're going to take us through a few steps of the process this evening to talk about fundraising for the performing arts and how Carolina Crown has been able to be so successful. With me tonight to do that, we have Jim Coates, CEO and Executive Director of Carolina Crown, and we have Ryan Brannon, I want to get this right, Logistics and Operations Manager, I think is the correct title. And then, of course, Brian Gilbert, CEO of FansRaise. And again, my name is TJ Kelly. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. We do have a couple of slides that we'll share the screen and kind of walk through a little bit of that presentation format. But before we do that, just thought we could kind of start off the top by, just some introductions, some background, and would love to introduce Jim Coates, CEO, Executive Director, Carolina Crown. And Jim, I'd love to throw it over to you to hear just kind of big picture how Crown approaches fundraising. I know you guys like to do things a little differently, how fundraising sort of fits into the grand scope of Crown's operations and kind of the overall setup. So if you would cue that up for us, we'd love to hear from you.
Sure. Welcome, everyone. Been here, Jim Coates at Crown for the last 18 years. Been in my position as CEO, Executive Director for the last 10 or 12, I believe. Lose track of time through all of that. During the process of building Crown the way we have, we're at a point now where in actuality, we have to raise about $900,000 a year. And we do that a little differently than most. We weren't fortunate enough to have a bingo in the state of South Carolina that we could just rely on those kind of staple funds that come in on a weekly basis and do those kind of things. So it came up to us trying to approach this a little different. I came from the business activity for-profit sector of the world, had a couple of my own business and within that managed a couple others for others, and then went on to consulting, as well as I was always active in the drum corps community and the band community, teaching bands and various M&M and Color Guard, and then doing the drum corps was the same. And then at one point I was the director of Crossman. And at that time I wasn't smart enough to figure out how to do fundraising, going back 30 years ago. And it was just coming out of my pocket. Fortunately, I was able to write the checks or do that. But I quickly learned how, once I invested a good bit into that, I learned how to dig into fundraising and come up with different ideas. One of the things that we do at Crown is what you want to hear too. We have a bunch of subsidiaries with Crown that fund everything back into Crown. They're solely owned by Carolina Crown. It could be a ticket business, a marching band supply store with instruments and things of that nature. We do a huge job in merchandising, t-shirts and stuff that Ryan's the manager of now. But we built all of those with that in theory, that we would own those and they would donate their profits back in and keep them under the nonprofit umbrella, as long as they're associated with what we do in marching arts, performing arts, so that we could still fit it all under our nonprofit 501c3. Well, then the other thing is that our general fundraising to the public. Now we do that in many different ways. One way that we do, and really the reason why we started looking at FansRaise this year, we traditionally do this thing and have for the last 16, 17 years, called a March-a-thon, where we went after unique donors. And by unique, I mean that they were people, friends, family, you name it, of the members that were involved in the ensemble. And they would have to, we had a form they filled out. They had to turn in 30 of these at the beginning of the season. They would write a little letter to the person, and that would in turn be mailed out. We would then get the funds all drawn back in through checks or cash. As the years went on, it went to just going onto our donor site, our e-commerce store, and donating through that with a member's name. So at some point in the last year or two, Brian had reached out to me and said, you're interested in doing the digital thing. Well, just take a look at me. My age is not one that is really that astute as to what goes on digitally. I just hang by the seat of my pants And I'm a stalker. I watch what everybody else does, but I don't really do that much when I do this. So that's why Ryan is here for me to do all those things. So in this general thing, especially since we were getting ready to do this and try our first attempt versus the mailing thing, that is labor intensive, quite honestly. By the time we got done with the printing of the forms for each person, getting them back in, reassuring ourselves that they were going to be honest and submit a true letter to a true address and not just go to the phone book, that we decided to, we interviewed with Brian earlier, and it was one of the persons that was looking to do our casino night and our some other fundraising thing from our board, Patty, that we were looking at doing. She brought us onto this. We sat down a little bit, and I was always hesitant of, why am I going to pay somebody else money when we could do it ourselves in-house? We were fortunate. We had a lot of volunteers, and we had 6, 7 people worked in our office that could handle some of the workload on that. Well, I decided that that's the way to go digitally. So we looked at what we would do. What we have found with our fundraising direct to public is that we typically do 4 unique ones that are dealt with. One is our Jewels campaign, which is our big yearly, this is what you want to give the crown for the organization to stay alive. Then there was, during the summer, we would do one with the unique individuals that I just explained, the March-a-thon, and that came strictly from the members. Now, we always offered that as a 25% kickback to the members, because we're dealing with people that are average age 19, 20 years old. So that we know they need it for school, they need to pay tuition, they need whatever. So we always did it that way. And then we would run a booster campaign. That was all done via our Facebook or social media groups, which was Feed the Core during the summer. And then we used to do a raffle in the months of September and October. And then we would do what we call our holiday campaign, which is November to January. So there were the 4 that go to the general public, with the one out of that being the March-a-thon. So this year we were looking for a unique hook that would let people give for that unique reason. And I'll let Ryan eventually, he'll explain what we did with this fit-a-thon. We happen to have a fitness program going on all through the year with our members that are auditioning, as well as already have been selected with contracts. So that made this a little easier to incentivize them. And I'll let Ryan explain with that. But we figured we would take the first stab at this year with the digital. And I was completely surprised and impressed by how it all came together, thanks to FansRaise. And we were very successful in 3 weeks, raising $35,000 through 60% of our membership, which is already less than what our full membership was, because some people opted out after the cancellation of our 2020 season. So with that, I hope that explains a little bit about what Crown does. I'm glad to offer suggestions or whatever from the years, my 18 years of doing fundraising. But I hope I can add some credence to what goes on here through the conversation tonight.
That's excellent. Thank you, Jim. I really appreciate the background and knowing how that kind of whole thing fits together. And as you alluded to, I'd love to have Ryan, if I could throw it over to you to go over how Crown ran this campaign, to kind of set up what we mean, at least on the FansRaise side, what we mean by campaign and how Crown executed this. We do have just a little bit of kind of introduction of how that all operates. And so Brian, I'm going to let you handle that, but I have to share out the screen so everybody can see.
Sure. So thanks again to everyone spending some time with us this evening and kind of sharing in these ideas. And crowdfunding is pretty simple, pretty accessible. I think a lot of people can get their brain around this, but essentially it's asking a large number of people to do very little. And in the aggregate, the results really can become astonishing. And crowdfunding is certainly not a new concept, although group-based or team-based large-scale crowdfunding campaigns are a little bit new, because I think a lot of people are very familiar with GoFundMe and Facebook fundraising. It's pretty ubiquitous. You see it all the time. Crowdfunding in the sense of a performing ensemble, with it carries some different outcomes with it. So if we go on to the next one here. So it typically crowdfunding campaigns, the way that we manage them at FansRaise for our partners, it's not exactly what you think it is. It's not like GoFundMe. It's not having 150 separate kids all building their own pages in isolation, saying whatever they feel is appropriate at that time. And it's not. It's the ability for the organization or the nonprofit entity behind the ensemble. Let's say it's a booster group, a parent supporter group, or just a performing nonprofit, to set up a certain set of parameters, the way that they write their ask, their logo, their branding standards, all of that. So it's all built around the organization first. We automate the asking part of it. So it's pretty simple. The ask of the students is very light. Contribute some contacts, put them into the platform, and then we will market to that captive group of audience, through the voice of the students. And it really does work, and it works amazingly well, even in a pandemic. And just to put some numbers and some scale to it, this campaign ran exactly 1 month. It ran 31 days through the course of July, raised almost $36,000, knocking on the door of it. And that's just donations we processed for Crown. And I'm sure there could have been some direct funds that came in directly to the organization that were kind of offline outside of our system, but over 600 donors. And these are not, in most cases, these are not known donors. These are net new contributors that are really brought to the organization from the individual ensemble members. And that's the key. I think drum corps, if we're going to focus on a genre, drum corps are generally pretty good at using social media and also leveraging their alumni support. This is different. This is a completely brand new set of constituents, a different audience. And they were really able to lean into that audience by leveraging their membership as a way to get there.
So thanks for the introduction, Brian. The numbers are especially impressive there when I take a look at the slides. And so I'd love to dive into exactly how kind of boots on the ground. So Ryan, it's your turn to take us through what that campaign looked like from your side, right? You were the one, as Jim alluded to earlier, responsible for implementing this, getting the members involved. And so would love to hear you, kind of take us through how you did that and how it arrived at such a successful end result. And we'll kind of come back around at the end and delineate a process, I think, that viewers of this webinar will be able to take notes on and share out and hopefully implement for their own programs. So if take it away on how Crown is implementing this.
All right. So when we first were discussing, I was introduced to FansRaise. It was how we could, like Jim had mentioned at the beginning, how could we supplement or how could we exchange what we used to do with the March-a-thon, which was a very labor-intensive, in-person, member-driven fundraiser, and bring it onto the FansRaise platform. And the March-a-thon was kind of built around pledging X dollars for what we used to do, laps around a football field, depending on the year, et cetera, et cetera. But what we took elements of what we used to do, and I was kind of tasked with trying to figure out how can we, in a time right now where we're all, working remotely, how can we do a collective campaign across with all of our membership? We had the platform FansRaise, and like Jim had alluded to before, we had a very kind of a bare bones kind of structure of a competition for fitness that our members used to use on our internal Facebook groups. So what I kind of dove into is trying to connect the dots between how can we kind of prepare ourselves physically to continue, preparing for drum corps. Because I mean, even without a summer of drum corps, you can bet we're just getting ready for 2021. And how can I connect that with the fundraising and crowdfunding elements of FansRaise, which is where I kind of started to go down this road of the Crown Fit-a-thon, where the points came from the activities, and the prize and the FansRaise donations. There was incentives for there's incentives or prizes, much like how we used to do a kickback for the March-a-thon. If you want to go to the next slide. So breaking it down simply, so like I said, connecting the dots between fitness and fundraising. Basically, it was a equal balance of both sides. So you earn, there's a kind of a rubric of, you get 1 point per mile ran, you get 1 point for 3 miles on a bike, et cetera, et cetera. And that with the obvious goal of building up, training to become, more physically fit for the activity that we participate in. And then the fundraising element, which was just, ones and zeros, is just us trying to break apart a goal of what we originally had of $30,000 and how do we make it more feasible for each member. So we had kind of a goal minimum that we were asking our membership to try and reach. What my attempt to make this happen was setting up teams to kind of build the competition element. And I mean, more or less in any performing arts activity, band, drum corps, when you start talking about teams of people, it always ends up being, the trumpets versus the saxophones, the high brass versus the low brass, so on and so forth. And like I talked about at the beginning, with us being so remote, we're all very disconnected right now. And my goal, not that they were aware, the membership was aware, but an internal goal of mine was to try and build some camaraderie and some bonuses out of this campaign that we're working on. So what I ended up doing is breaking every individual down on a spreadsheet with their name and their section, and breaking them into smaller manageable teams, but ensuring there was at least one member of every subsection of every group to try and avoid the kind of clique that tends to happen when you do these kind of band competitions. And so with the teams in place, there's really, to make it easy for the membership to kind of wrap around, there's really one mandatory goal that I ask from all of them, since we're in a time now where we are trying to continue drum corps, but also understanding they have the rest of the world that continues on. I only specifically, if you want to call it, require them was to simply sign up for the FansRaise, create their FansRaise account, and input a minimum of 30 emails. And these were emails of individuals that they knew personally. At least they knew them by first name. They were somewhat aware of the activity, drum corps that they're participating in, and an individual that may consider donating, whether it was $1, $10, whatever. With the benefit of crowdfunding is that's the point. It's kind of the strength in numbers. With our kind of formula was if each of our members could include the 30 emails, we would hope, kind of gather that maybe 2/3 of them would respond to the email and make some form of donation. And if if 20 of your 30 donors supplied at least $10, that'd be $200. And then if every one of our members would reach that minimum, we would hit our goal. So it was an easier way to break down what seemed like a huge goal into something a little bit easier from the wraparound, instead of us kind of demanding that you do this fundraiser and raise X amount of dollars, is to add some competition and an element that made it more enjoyable. So with the fundraising, my goal was of course to get 100% participation. In a time like this, when we're all working by ourselves, it's hard to pull everybody back in. And so what I ended up doing initially was actually working with our leadership, which is a select group of members who have marched a couple years and are across all of our sections. And the goal was to kind of get them to buy into this concept. I broke down the idea to them and kind of got their feedback on what were some things that would sort of drive you to want to continue. What competition element would make this more enjoyable? And so we started coming up with these prizes. And the goal was to have multiple prizes. So there's not just one for whoever does X the most of, but the grand prize being if we can get 100% participation from all the members, being that they all included their email addresses and they all raised that minimum $200. And on the fitness side of it, they were able to continue being active, logging. It was a total of 60 points, which break down as 2 points a day. If you were all able to reach this goal, which broken down day by day is fairly manageable, there'd be a grand prize that would actually be for the entire drum corps. And for us, after some deliberation with the leadership, we decided we were going to we wanted to rent a dunk tank that we would bring out to spring training next season and put all of their favorite staff and techs, and have an afternoon of getting a little bit of angst out after summer of drum corps. So it was something that they were really into, and so that's kind of what we presented. But aside from the grand prize, we wanted to continue a kind of a tiered incentive program. So with the teams and individuals in mind, we broke it up into 4 other kind of segments, which would be a team who raised the most points, a team who earned the most donations, and a member with the most points, and a team with the most donations. And so that way it was my attempt to get as much interaction across the entire drum corps from multiple directions, so that let's say team 1 is earning a bunch of points because they all run marathons each day, but team 2 is they've been entering in a ton of contacts and receiving a lot of donations. It made it easier to try and give benefits to all the membership hard work instead of just a select few people. So really the goal overall was to try and continue to get that 100% or close to as much participation as possible. Kind of a lofty goal set in place, knowing that we may not get there, but when we were able to reach our goal of 30,000, as you can see, we exceeded it by a fair sum, which is amazing. Then I was able to kind of pull back on some of the rules a little bit to still give credit where credit is due to the membership, because they did work very hard, regardless if we were able to successfully get everyone involved in it.
That's excellent. So that is kind of the nuts and bolts of it, right? There's not too much more involved in it. You've got the prizes, you've got teams and kind of motivating by way of the incentive, you call it, right? The
Right.
Friendly competition. And I see your point about not always pitting section against section, as does so often happen. So it's simple, and it almost sounds overly so, but clearly the proof is there that it has worked out. And so we're extremely proud and glad to be a part of it, and have contributed to that cause to to help Crown out that way. So that really is kind of everything. And I don't know if Brian or Jim, if you have extra to add on top of that. We do have a number of questions lined up, and of course it's still up open for all the attendees here on Zoom with us this evening to add any more questions in the Q&A section if you'd like to. Looks like we've had a few answered already, so thank you for doing that. But keep those coming in if you have any more of those. But I mean, throw it over to Brian. In hearing how Crown has operated this campaign, and you've seen a number of these things. Obviously, Crown has had a number of successes along the way here. Do you have any kind of closing thoughts on what how Crown's campaign wrapped up, and what made it special, all that kind of thing?
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like Crown, the way they do everything. If you spend any amount of time around this organization, and this could probably be said for just about any of that, elite world-class DCI ilk, you can just tell by the way they ride the bus. You can tell by the way they line their horns up. You can tell by the way they take water breaks. I mean, this is a group that's extremely driven to achieve, and they set the bar higher and higher, and they just go after it. So our goal in creating FansRaise was to provide a way to make fundraising a lot easier, a lot simpler, move it online, make it virtual. And fortuitous for us that everyone now looking for touchless, a way to digitally engage in the area of COVID. This really lays in well with that. But we're finding that the thing that is universal across all nonprofit fundraising is that if you don't ask, you don't get. And I think it becomes really easy for organizations, and it's probably a topic for another webinar, but to almost talk themselves out of why they might be considering a campaign. And I don't think you can ever throttle back your fundraising ever. I think that's really when things start to die on the vine a little bit. So you have to get creative, you have to get different. That's not to say that there's not going to be a whole lot of COVID-19 influenced fundraising campaigns happening, and that's great, but it can be very, very effective. And it can be done virtually. It can be done while we're working together, but apart.
Right. Those are all good points. We do have a few more questions. I don't mean to cut you off here, Brian. But questions for the Crown team. So Ryan and Jim, I guess you two can decide who gets to answer these. But first question is from William Koval here. He asks, the goal is for 100% involvement. What was the actual percentage of involvement when you finished? And I imagine, Will didn't ask this, but I'm going to. I imagine that probably breaks down differently between folks who did the activity portion versus those who did the fundraising portion. So I don't know if you have both of those numbers or ballpark on those, but that is a great question.
I could tell you that 92% of the members engaged at some point in the campaign. Some more fully than others. Side. Yeah. So
yeah, I was going to say it was over 90% from the FansRaise side. We kind of throughout the month of July, I would do daily check-ins with the membership. We use Slack for communication, so we had a Slack channel that I'd give them daily updates, and they used it for both communicating and competition and so on and so forth. The fitness side of it, we had about 70% total involvement over it. Some kids, a good majority kind of met somewhere within the minimum or slightly over. I had a few, probably 10, 15, 20 kids that had like our member who won the highest point individual points had over 400 points. So by the time towards the end of July, the activity portion of it got really serious for some of these kids. It was a really good engagement. Actually, we carried it over. We actually changed it from the Crown Fit-a-thon. We're doing it in July now with the members that haven't burned themselves out last month. We just call it Commit to Crown Fit. So it was overall it was a really good experience for a lot of them, and it's had some good carryover.
400 points, and the goal was 60.
Yeah, it was. He was a monster.
That's impressive.
Let me interject something there. So just for clarity's sake, really, typically we have 160 people that we carry on our roster. At the time we implemented this, we were down to somewhere around 60% of those that were confirmed wanted to go on and do 2021. So let's say that's 100 people in actuality that really participated rather than 160 typically. Typically, we would make this mandatory where 100% of the people needed to present their 30 emails or their 30 sheets, as I mentioned earlier. So the chances of it being a lot higher would have been, I would expect if we did it higher, it would have been somewhere in the $45,000 range for the participation of that. You're always going to have some that are going to give you emails that are valued at nothing. Again, as Ryan stated, the thing to do is make it simple for them. All my thing in the beginning was 30 emails, each that somebody give us an email that somebody could give $5 to $10. Forget about the ones that were going to be 500 because they're going to be the grandmom and the grandfather or the aunt and the uncle that are going to do that. So that's found money to you because in our case, we only keep our students for basically an average of 2 years. So the first year is when you get the most impact out of that. So your freshman class, your sophomore class, you're going to get them and the parents to be really involved. The older they get, the less they become involved. So the 60% participation of what that was, or the 70% that Ryan mentioned in this case, is still a good return for that comes in. Now, that said, there was majority of those, and I don't know, Brian, if you could give the percentages, but I know that there was a couple of handfuls of people that gave above $200 and you could tell they were the intimate family relations of people that were involved. And that's always going to be the case. It always has been the case with us that they're going to do that. But they were first or second year members. This was going to be their first year. They haven't even competed with us yet. They were still going through the process of when do I get to spring training where I can feel like a member kind of thing. So if they're in a band and already have a membership and know that, I think it's a very easy and simple method. And again, not as labor intensive as we had to go through before.
Those are great points. I appreciate especially that, the folks who are still new are just as motivated and sometimes even more motivated. That's an important takeaway. You can't always rely on just if you're a band, right, the seniors or something, it might be the excited young freshmen coming in the door. So that's a good point. Another question here, this one from David asking how to get around the objection from folks to supply names of friends or family because they're being inundated with unwanted mail or requests. So we did get a typed answer on that, but I think generally speaking, you're asking folks to give to the people they are comfortable asking, right? So if there is an objection, that's fine. You don't have to give that name, right? There are some folks out there who are more sensitive than that to others, and that we respect that. In terms of the privacy of the technology on the platform, we don't give out any information or any of that stuff. All that is protected and private. But on the student level, we're asking them to give the names that they're most comfortable giving. Right, so that's an important kind of trust in the system sort of thing that we bake in right from day one, and we don't want to push anybody, and I'm sure that the Crown folks would feel similarly about it. Nobody is twisting arms or any of that. So if there's objections, that's fine. We respect that, and we kind of move on from there. Another question here is about are there concerns about returning to the same well over time for members providing the same contacts repeatedly? And so Crown, is the first campaign that you've done with us. So Brian, I know that you've done, a number of these have had repeats of, past projects and campaigns, and the example given here is about folks who run with a marching band in the fall, and then they'll turn around a few months later and do it again with, Winter Guard or Indoor Drumline or something, and have not had much of a problem on the returning to the well question.
Right. And actually, we find that organizations that actually go year over year with it, like rebooting their campaign, or it'll be a new campaign, but you have to really think that, you graduate seniors, let's say it's a high school environment, you graduate your senior class, your rookies are coming in, your ninth graders. So 75% of those kids have already been through the experience once. They already have contact lists already loaded in, in the system. So to hit play on another campaign is just like, going back to the money factory for a way of thinking. And it's very simple to do, and standing up a campaign quickly is quite easy.
And Jim, did you have an answer to that
I
too?
did want to add that, and we go through that. I'm very much aware, and as Ryan can testify to this, is that I don't like going to the well that often. We schedule out a whole year of calendar of when we're going to do major fundraising events. And they're specifically designed for that reason, that we always don't go. Doesn't mean once a person shows us that they want to give, once they give twice, then of course they're going to be involved in every one of those. But in this unique one, Ryan and I were just discussing today, this was unique donors. Now, within that, we had some that we checked against our own database. Well, first of all, we didn't receive the database from FansRaise. That's up to the individual owns that. So we couldn't just say, Brian and TJ, give us the database, we want to use that one, because we don't. We're used to that because we have a Crown ticket business that is unique, selling tickets to anywhere. So we never mix that one with Carolina Crown's general database, unless it's a specific thing of you want to donate in addition to you're buying a ticket. But again, back to this, we run one campaign, it's just capital expense. Capital campaign is a new equipment trailer. Is it a new set of flags? Is it a new prop you want to do this year? Whatever that is. Then we run just a member campaign, which was this one for the year. We would have run a second one, a third one in this case, which would have been Feed the Core for a specific purpose. And you're going to find traditionally, we have 160 people. So we just put that out through our social media in general. And who ends up donating the most is the parents who basically already paid for the kid to be there, and they're already going to get fed. They just wanted to incentivize it more with a better meal. So one night we got enough sponsor a meal. You ended up getting a steak dinner versus a hamburger dinner or a chicken patty dinner. But it was coming from the same people that already paid because their kid was involved. And then the other one is a holiday campaign. You can include everybody in a holiday campaign because that is just the time of the year to give. and we rerun specifically at certain times. We run the capital campaign during the Easter. It's a time when people want to give. They feel happy. They feel happy to give. They feel tax season's over with. They may have gotten some money back, and there they go. They get some. And then the holiday one is because it's the holiday spirit. Who doesn't want to give something, a gift of something like that? The other ones, you don't go to the well too often, but whatever you find, you do need to be selective on your list of donors. You do need to analyze that and make sure that you gradually develop them to want to give. That's why we still have, in our case, and I'm sure it goes on with the band world, I see band moms and dads still contributing to their band once their kid has aged out and gone to college. Well, they're still going to give. And it's the same thing with Crown. They've aged out and the parents become friends and they understand the purpose of the organization. So therefore, we do ask them 2 or 3 times a year, but we don't expect anything from them. We don't hard ask. We do a soft ask, whether you get one mailer or in this case, a digital, and we're trying to turn most things to digitally, but I will always still keep in my mind, 2 of those campaigns will have something that comes to them in their hand, they open up in the mail. And that's the capital campaign and that's the holiday campaign, but they'll also have a digital aspect to it. So, and that will be a more general. So I hope that helps clarify a little.
Yeah, there's quite a bit of using the well in those examples, and obviously you've had a tremendous amount of success with it. So that is, I think, excellent context for how this kind of fits into sort of expanding the well, but obviously fitting into your overall strategy there. So great answer and great question. Thank you for that one. Another question here asks if this would be feasible on a smaller scale, like with a DCA core, for example. So, we have worked with a number of DCA cores. So right off the top, that's a fact-based answer. Yes, definitely. But, I feel also, I don't know if anybody else on the call has, opinion on the matter, but I don't think that the fact that you have 160, names of members on the Crown side is the reason this worked. I think if you had 60, maybe the overall math might not have been quite so extensive, but the process, I think, was fairly, consistent regardless of size of group. So, I don't know if Brian, if you have any thoughts on that, since, you were around for the DCA campaigns.
Yeah, so we ran quite a few DCA member core campaigns pretty early on in our life cycle with FansRaise. And I would actually contend that on some level, those campaigns might actually be more effective. And the reason for that is that age group is a little bit older. There are some young high school kids that are trying to aspire to make a world-class DCI core in terms of gaining experience. But rank and file, a lot of the membership will have careers and real jobs and probably have a more well-developed personal network where they've got coworkers and partners and things like that. So they kind of understand how that works a little bit. But yeah, we've run some pretty nice campaigns. They might be with smaller ensembles, but everything's proportional, and if it's a 30-member indoor color guard or indoor percussion ensemble and they raise $16,000 in a couple weeks, still 30 kids, and that's still a lot of money. That's a lot of car washes and bake sales to try to equate that.
Well said. There's 2 questions here that kind of go together. One was about considering giving out products like bumper stickers, t-shirts, etc., for donations that reach a particular level. So that's kind of a tried and true, method in the fundraising world of giving these gifts as a thank you. And Crown, you had kind of flipped that, Ryan. You talked about the prizes. For example, your gifts were internal, right, to members rather than to the donors. And along those lines, David asks if you could elaborate on some of the costs that the gifts and prizes for those members were. And I don't, I want to put you on the spot to give away the secret sauce here. So as forthcoming as you would like to be on any of that. But in both cases, this is, costs to the ensemble, then being, kind of attributed to, well, if we're going to run this $35,000 campaign, we're going to spend X dollars to get it done. And, there's a FansRaise answer to that, but I think more important would be, the kind of the Crown and organization level answer to that. So Ryan, do you have any details you want to share with us on that?
I guess the prizes, what I spent a lot of time in trying to break down the teams is if I'm going to give a team prize, obviously I'm giving, break it down, it's X dollars per member. So it had to be, attainable gifts, like the pizza party for the team that raises what was it, the most points. So obviously when you have 10 members, like you're not gonna break the bank with, in theory, a pizza party, but like the member who earned the individual who earned the most activity points, considering that he had like over 400 points, he probably deserved something fitness related. So he earned a sports watch, a Garmin watch. But overall, the amount we kind of budgeted before starting the fundraiser, how much we're going to expense into prizes, and it ended up being about 5% of the total amount raised. I think that's the right money amount. It was by the time we were done, we spent about $1,500 on prizes for all the membership.
And I would just add to that any kind of incentivization that you want to create for members or for donors, the platform can capture that information. And let's say that donations over $75 get the show T-shirt. We actually have a mechanism by which you can capture the physical mailing address of donors that want to opt in if their donation qualifies for a given tier, which is pretty cool. Delivering and fulfilling on that product promise, though, is ultimately the organization. But yeah, it's a great idea. We see it work really well. Incentivizing either the member behavior, participant behavior, or it's the PBS pledge drive model of, you donate $500, you get this little CD, and people love it. So.
Yeah. NPR tote bags, they're everywhere.
Yes.
So Ryan, you had mentioned offline about the kind of the importance of being sort of in the trenches with the members to keep motivated and sort of be, I call that like the champion, right? Somebody who's usually, I would say it's the director of the ensemble or whoever that person has appointed and delegated, say you're now in charge. We have both of those two people from Crown on the call tonight for exactly that reason. But I think that serves as evidence that there needs to be somebody who is taking charge and kind of running things on a day-to-day basis and staying in chat, in constant contact with the members. So is that your feeling on it too, Ryan, that was, kind of an important piece?
Yeah, like I'd mentioned, we had a group chat of sorts to stay connected. And one thing that I felt was important from the beginning, that while the prior fundraiser of this was mandatory and there were mandatory elements of the fit-a-thon, I wanted to sell it to the members so that they wanted to do it. So I wasn't making them do it, but they felt a sense of giving to the organization, but also, having fun doing it and bettering themselves doing it, and kind of a mechanism of that, and in relation also communicating with them daily. You met in the trenches, like I competed in the fit-a-thon as well. There was actually, we had 10 teams, but we also had Team Crown. And it was comprised of a couple of our administration, a handful of our visual staff and our brass staff. And it just, of course, we didn't qualify for any of the prizes, but it was all just for the fun of the game. And even a few of us on administration, we actually created our own, and you helped us create kind of that split with how we can communicate with the contacts we provide. But we also did our part to try and help, give back to the organization. And the whole reason, aside from, I genuinely, of course, want to help Crown, but I also wanted it to make it abundantly clear to the membership that, like, we're in this together. And so that way, to avoid any negative, like we'd spoken of earlier, any pushback on people who truly just don't want to do it. But it's a surprising and motivator for membership that might be kind of hard to get rolling on this when they see it's like, well, Ryan just ran 11 miles. Why can't I go outside and go for a walk? Little things like that. Or, we had mentioned about the size of different campaigns, the people participating in it, and that the return. We actually had quite a large group of our members. We required the minimum 30, but some of them went upwards of 50, 55 email addresses. And I mean, there was a return on that. And it's kind of the more you get, the more you give, the more you get back. And it's kind of a positive snowball effect, if you will. And then with that, it allowed me to stay in touch with members that I saw that, I don't want to say underperforming, but kind of were slow to start with it. And, you know, in a time like this, everyone's dealing with their own real world situations. So staying as connected as possible allowed me to reach out to, you know, so-and-so, like, hey, couldn't help but notice that, you know, why haven't you set up your FansRaise account yet? Like, it's super easy. You've, you know, you've authenticated an account for every social media, you know, in the last year. And why can't we just click a link and put in a couple emails? Like, well, you know, I'm going through this, I'm going through that. And talking with them and making it personal and making it apparent that we're all doing this, it made it a lot easier to kind of get this going. And it really did keep giving back to that whole team, competitive competition, you know, team morale building, all in all for that.
That's a really good point. I like the idea of the admin team, you know, running half marathons or something to prove the point. That's
we almost won the highest activity points. We lost that kid who got 100 or 400 points. He's the one who pushed us out of first place. But Team Crown was winning most activity points up until the last day.
That really would have been.
You guys are going to be coming into 2021 like all jacked. Like you're going to be like a core full of CrossFitters and marathoners.
That's right.
That would have been
They're two very different things, but you get my joke.
The saddest pizza party ever, when it's just the admin staff eating the pizza and all the members aren't allowed to have any. There have been a few questions coming in about things like fees and that sort of thing. We don't want to turn this into a sales pitch. This is intended to be, you know, Crown kind of sharing their wisdom with the world. We, you know, do have that documentation. We can talk a little bit about that. One question was about processing. Credit card fees are what they are. I wish they didn't exist, but, you know, PayPal and Stripe and all these others, they all charge that, you know, kind of 3% ballpark, and there's nothing, you know, the bank would let us do about that. So yes, that exists. And then another question about how fees compare to SnapRaise and a few of the others. You know, like I said, I'm not trying to turn this into a sales pitch. We do have a kind of a special, or whatever you might want to call it, running this summer. We've waived all the fees and we just do optional kind of tip from the donors the same way that GoFundMe does. So, you know, we are kind of working on that, and we're happy to talk more about that if anybody is interested. But like I said, I'm not trying to, you know, take time away from Crown and turn this into a sales pitch. So, so good questions on those, and thanks for sending those in. There was another question about, Ryan, you can run 11 miles and create fundraising contests. So Crown is obviously in good hands. Not exactly a question per se, but you know, a compliment to you, Ryan. So you have a fan out there. And then there were a few other questions. One of the other ones I wanted to address is people asking if we're going to be sending out the slides from this, and the answer is absolutely yes. We're also recording this video and kind of broadcasting out onto the world, so we'll be able to post that. Everyone can, you know, either go download the slides, watch the video. We're going to get this out there so everyone can watch and rewatch and share. So that's a good question from a lot of folks, so thanks for asking that. A few others that I'll run down real fast on the questions was the length of a typical campaign and kind of recommended length. And I think there are probably two answers to that. From Jim and kind of the history of Crown and your fundraising success. You've already articulated a lot of the seasonality of it, and I don't know if that kind of goes into like run the holiday one for exactly the month of December or something, or if you kind of, you know, let that one just see how long it goes. There's a FansRaise answer, but I think again, first there's a kind of a Crown answer and what you have all had success with. So in terms of how long a particular campaign might run, do you have any feeling on what's good, what's bad, where the sweet spot is?
Yeah, I basically look at a campaign running a minimum of a month, so that we dedicate all of our social media aspects and marketing to that. And if it runs longer than that, but I don't continue another one right after it. I hit and hide, hit and hide, hit and hide, so that it gives the person, the people that typically give, a chance to go, oh, it's okay that I only gave there 3 months ago, 2 months ago. That's why I specifically look at, we run and have over the years run 4 major ones a year, 4 times a year, and we fill in with what I call emergency or just an extra need of, depending on how the time of one lasted. But if I think of the terms of everything doing at least a month, that's what I usually use. Now the campaign for like the holiday one you mentioned, we set that off typically Thanksgiving weekend, and we run, and that goes on until about, that one specifically give before the time runs out and get the donation credit for your taxes. So the month of January, we still bring in maybe 2,500 out of the 40,000, 50,000 we would typically raise during that month and a half. So that one is really a month and a half that it runs because we tie in the 2 holidays. The one in April or May, whenever Easter is, it's supposed to hit their door or be done during the Easter break in time. And usually people give, even though it lasts a month, month and a half, people usually give within the first 2 weeks. You have it. That's where your major thing is. And I don't know if that specifically is what FansRaise sees too. In the very beginning, that's when people, if you can get them to open an email right away and give right away, make it simple, make it easy, that's better. Again, I'm looking forward to trying this on different ones that we do that are mailers, because we have to let them fill out something and mail it back to us or go online and do another step. So the ease is what we're looking for with the donor giving.
Sure.
Yeah, I think, Jim, you have a future in marketing with that philosophy. Absolutely true.
Absolutely.
And Brian, I think you would confirm some of that on what we've seen.
Yeah, so we've run quite a bit of these campaigns over the almost 4 years that we've been providing this service to the performing arts. And I would definitely say that our best results stay inside of a month in terms of the overall duration of a campaign. I think any longer than that, you're asking the kids to focus. And I'm saying kids in the sense of, middle school, high school, college, even drum corps, but you're asking the kids to do something additional and extra and focus on it and really provide some level of dedication to it and do it well. It becomes a sustained issue. Like there is a point of diminishing returns. And we're basically working through a captive group of member contributed contacts. So yeah, a lot are going to donate. It's front loaded, in those first couple of weeks, it's real crazy. And the Crown basically raised most of $36,000. $28,000 of that was in the first 2 weeks. So it was definitely, front load heavy. And to Jim's point, yeah, that time between Christmas and New Year's, Thanksgiving and New Year's is the giving season. That is the nonprofits' lifeblood. Making that end of year appeal, and being able to reach the supporters of an organization many different ways, whether it is through digital or through the mail. It is important to throw some change ups once in a while, and I think that's right on point.
So what do you think the takeaway would be there? So, for the viewers watching this and watching later, downloading our material, who are planning to implement this or another fundraising campaign for their organization, is the lesson there: push hardest on the first 2 weeks because that's where you have the most momentum, the most energy? Or is it push in the last 2 weeks because that's where you have the least action, and so the harder you push, the more you can, get some last minute kind of donations? Which one of those two pushes do you think would be the most effective, or has been in Crown's case with past campaigns? And I guess let's, Jim, if you have thoughts on what you've seen first from Crown.
I believe that you, like anything else, you push heavy in the very beginning. We do a lot of teasing before we send something out. Look, create a story. Oh, you're going to be surprised what's coming to you next, kind of a thing. And therefore, when we do release it, we get a big impact a little bit right off the bat. And then really the last week, we build up a little bit and say, okay, this is coming to an end. Let's just hammer away to everyone once more. We know you gave once. Do you still want to give a little bit more? Or we know you haven't give. Maybe you just forgot. It's in your inbox. Check your junk mail. Here it is. And we do that. We kind of let the middle handle itself. That second week is still dribbling off of the impact of the load. And the third week is kind of like, it's getting tired and not paying attention a lot. And then we bang heavy for 3 or 4 days with finalizing it, make us reach our goal. In this case, we hit our goal early, so we increased the goal. And that was another push that we were able to do at the end of it all. Once we reached our goal, we didn't give up. Ryan set up and said, Ryan, what are you going to do now? We reached our goal. I'm going to hit, I'm going to raise the goal. Okay, fine. We found that more people gave. So all of a sudden we increased it to 40,000. In that last week and a half, we got $6,000 or whatever that showed up last week, really. And that was from that final push. that if we didn't do that, if we reached our goal and just gave up, we set a time limit of a month, we use the time, and we dedicate the effort to the full time, just heavy front load and the back load. Take your pick of days, how often you want to do it. What's your reach? How do you get the reach? What can you incentivize as far as people watching something, or creative marketing? You know, is it a story? Is it a joke? Now give, you know, kind of thing. Yeah, that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And to Ryan's point, Ryan did a great job in making sure that everyone knew what was going on, and he was holding members accountable, but then also like letting that early stage, like frenetic activity go nuts in those first, week to 10 days of the campaign. But then now you've got results, and you can turn around and go to the kids that might be lagging behind a little bit or on the fence, I'm not sure. And now you go, well, look, it obviously works. And, this is so easy to do. Plus, with the way these campaigns are built, the work is on the front. Like once we hit go on the campaign, it's all automated. The kids aren't typing in email messages and appeals. We're doing all that for them. So it's just a little bit of work on the front end to build the lists. And then we coach them through the process and give them some tips and tricks. We'll do some, some explainer videos or update videos if the organization wants it as, just some added value. But otherwise, it was a lot of it toward the end was Ryan, trying to move things along with some of the lagging members. So good job on Ryan's part.
Thanks.
So it sounds like, oh, go ahead, Ryan, sorry.
I was just gonna add, like kind of Jim alluded, we bookended it. We put a lot of, like Brian said, I'll put all the work up in front so that it gets up and running. It took care of itself. And actually, once we hit our first goal, during the first few weeks, I'd actually been asking and collecting just little video clips of our members going out and being active and doing things. And what I wanted to do is create this montage of like, this is where your money is going. Like, this is what our kids are doing. And when we hit that goal, we were able to, release that video and kind of, showcase, hey, we hit our first goal. Can you help us reach our push goal? And then with that, since I was able to loosen up on, internally, I reached out to the members, like you said, are kind of lagging behind. I was like, all right, so we hit, our goal. Like, this is great, but what can I do to get you guys involved? And so I reeled back, how many, the requirement for some of the contacts for some of the members, because any participation at this point is better than no participation. And then since we didn't have the, long story short, we weren't able to get the dunk tank because we didn't have the 100% participation. We actually, a core tradition is we do beads every year, but instead, I'm actually having little pendants made that they can wear in replacement of what would have been the summer, just as a reminder and a thank you from us to them. Hey, like, we know you put in the work, this, the numbers show for it. And that incentive, drove, we are having contacts and member participation all the way up until the end. The graph is just a growing chart. And it was kind of that bookend approach from my side, at least.
That's a great point, that even if the ultimate, grand prize goal doesn't get met, there are still ways to reward, the group for working hard. And the ultimate goal was met. The grand prize might not have been,
right,
but the goal was met, right? So that, of course, is great news. A question here from Patty. She asks, how often does FansRaise resend emails to those who haven't gotten a response from yet? So that's obviously a technical question about the platform rather than, like strategy from Crown. But Brian, do you have quick details on how that might work for folks interested?
Yeah, it's probably a minor detail. Like, we find that if they see the email 2 or 3 times and don't donate, they're probably not going to. And that's one of the things where we will actually coach members to look at their contact list and look at their donor list and they could bring this up on their mobile device on the app. And if there are contacts that you put on your list that are conspicuously absent from your donor list, you need to kind of ask why. Maybe it got caught up in spam or junk. It happens, right? Or maybe you had the email address wrong. You might want to consider sharing your campaign page another way. Airdrop it, text it, email it outside of the platform, just a direct personal email. Whatever works, whatever gets that donor to light up a donation under your name in the platform, that's really the, by hook or by crook, like one way or another, gets the job done. But we send support a request every 3 to 5 days on average to the aggregated list of contacts from the members. And so it's enough where there's some repetition and it's steady, but they can opt out at any time. And if they're not going to give and they opt out, then they're just going to get the email again.
And after they donate, they no longer receive follow-up emails, correct?
Yeah, they're suppressed at that point if they donate, and that's unless the organization wants to do like a final through the platform email, like a thank you or a campaign wrap up, something like that. That can be done. And we've had organizations say, hey, we want to do a midpoint, like to donors and contacts alike, whether they've donated or not. We just kind of want to level set. Here's where we are, and this is why we still need help. And that's fine to do too. So the platform, the automation that we use allows for that type of flexibility.
That's great. We have one last question here about planning and budgeting for fundraised capital, right? If the success of the fundraiser is unknown, you have a goal, but you don't know if you're actually going to hit it. How do you work that into like budgeting for your organization at large, or is that kind of a larger topic beyond just the scope of today's call? I don't know, but question about kind of integrating planning for what is ultimately an unknown. So I guess let's throw that to Jim first, if you have any thoughts on that.
I would always say, don't spend anything until you have it in your hand is the way to start. So if you have an unknown with a first fundraiser, just consider it gravy on the top of everything. That's the way I go about it. In this case, I know, again, we have ours down pretty much to a science. I know what we're going to go direct to the public with. I know what kind of format works for what. There has to be a specific reason. This happened to be the being fitness that they were already doing, already part of their program, that the parents and the friends and the family of them, first and foremost, were going to say, well, that's great. It's just not sitting in concert band, sitting still and doing that. But there's other incentives in concert band that you could do too, to do it. Make it fun for the participants that have to come up with the draw. And the draw on this specific campaign was the member themselves and the fitness of the member. The holiday one is usually a capital thing that we run. We specifically pick, oh, this year we want to redo our equipment trailer and it's going to cost X number of dollars, and therefore go for it. We know that certain times we can bank on what people are going to give. Again, this was a surprise. To be honest with you, internally, I only budgeted $20,000 for this because I was skeptical in the beginning of how the participation was going to go. Again, it was the first pass at us doing really, truly digital 100% on this and to a selected audience. So I didn't budget what we typically did. And Brian, I remember I explained that to you in the very beginning when we did that. We knew that our March-a-thon was bringing in somewhere around between 25 and 35 a year. And it would be up and down depending on the history, the length of time that a member sat with us. Were they involved? If they were a 4-year vet, then they were giving less by the time they got to the 4th year, or getting people to give less, giving us less contacts and giving us not as active contacts or valuable contacts. So in this case, I budgeted less and we received more. And so that's how I would go about budgeting. There's not I don't know, in fundraising, there is a specific thing, time tested campaigns will bring you a certain amount. You can bet on those. At least I have done that, and my like constituents throughout the country have done the same thing, and we all tell stories and divulge the real things after we tell our stories. But the trick is, once they're time and tested, you could kind of do those. You do have to switch it up a little bit though in that. What's the makeup in it? What's the capital that you're doing it for? What's the purpose? And how invigorating can you make the members, in our case, or the students, in most band cases, want to be active in it and give the names that are valuable. We preach to them about that. So
yeah. Those are great points. Brian, you look like you had a thought
Yeah,
on that?
I was just going to say that in most high school band environments, the results are going to be better if whoever the lead educator is that's ultimately responsible for the output of the program, if he or she are really behind the campaign, the kids are going to sit up and notice that. If it's a band director that generally tends to stay arm's length away from fundraising and kind of lets the boosters run around and do it, it's not to say that the boosters can't be involved or shouldn't be involved, but I think when we look at scaling this in a way that's useful for high school programs, even middle school programs, if a lead educator stands up and, I'm the band director, I'm going to get the kids' attention with this. And, if all things are right with the program, the kids generally want to run through walls, for that individual if they're really doing it right. And a lot of our educators are. So I think that that executive sponsorship from the top is really important. And they don't have to do all the work necessarily. And not that there's a ton of work to do, it's pretty easy, but they don't have to do much other than make it important, make it a thing. Talk about it at the end of rehearsal, talk about it at the beginning of rehearsal. If you sense, oh boy, that battery percussion section is really weak, they're just mailing it in. Hey guys, come take a walk with me. That's a way to get their attention. And if they know it's important, they'll generally step up and do it.
Yeah, those are great points. So we do have we're kind of past our hour here. I want to respect people's evening and not go too much longer. So are there any kind of closing thoughts before we end for the evening here? Ryan, you've said quite a bit about the detail, and I'm eternally grateful to you for that. But any kind of closing thoughts on how all this has tied up for you?
Like Jim had mentioned, we weren't sure what to expect of this. We kind of not that set the bar low, but set reasonable expectations, and then if you're able to succeed, then that's great, and that's absolutely what happened with us. So we're grateful for what you guys were able to provide for to our campaign to make it what it is. It's kind of what Brian said before. Whoever is planning this and whoever is running it, so to speak, you kind of got to be invested in it. Like the FansRaise portion of it has the features and tools that does all the heavy lifting, but it's the interpersonal relationship that you're building with your ensemble to you're selling your kids why they should care about this, so that they can sell to whoever they're asking for donors why it matters to them. And I think that's kind of critical to your success, is making it very evident that you care, and then showcasing that to whoever you're working with.
There are some questions here that are worth addressing, and they kind of go off what you're describing, Ryan, but are questions directly targeted at the two of you as representatives of the Drum Corps. So those being more kind of targeted and direct, I think we can kind of follow up with after the fact. That maybe we'll shoot you a question or two and see if there's a way to spin this out to some folks that are interested in those, without kind of inundating everybody's email inbox more than it already is. So thank you for some of those questions. Appreciate that. And Ryan and Jim, listen, we are just so grateful to you for taking your time on this. Jim, do you have any kind of closing thoughts on, on how the whole process has worked?
No, I pleasantly not surprised. I believed it was going to work. I just was, again, you get set in your own ways of doing things, and you're like, well, why am I going to try to fix something that maybe isn't broke? But in this case, I thank you both for working with us going through this. Certainly we'll take a look at other programs that we're running during our calendar year, and stay involved. And I wish everyone the best of luck, and don't hesitate to take a chance with FansRaise. I think it's going to be it could be a great tool for you, and pleasantly surprise you as it did for me as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Yeah.
It means a lot. I met Jim back in my marching days when I was with the Crossmen, and he was on the staff and the admin team. And, we've been around this activity for a long time, and I think that, yeah, it's changed, and changed even more so dramatically with COVID. But I think there's a move and a counter move to it. And I think that there's certainly opportunities to get a little creative and do things a little bit differently. And don't be afraid to try something that might be a little bit outside of the norm for you. Of course, nowadays, what is normal? I'm not sure anyone really knows, but we're certainly game to help.
Yep, and just real fast, as we mentioned earlier, we have waived our platform fees, right? So if you're interested in trying, now is a great time. We're happy to just talk with you, answer any questions. Like I said, I don't want to turn this into a sales pitch, but you just heard it from Jim and from Ryan that they had more success even than they planned on, and so that's one of the best endorsements we could ever hope for, and hopefully that proves that the process works, and we'd be happy to show that to anybody. So the campaigns need to go launched by September 1st in order to take advantage of that. So don't wait. Send us an email, go to fansraise.com. We would love to tell you all about it, show you how that works. And there's no pressure, no cost. Just want to talk to you, walk you through how all that operates. And hopefully tonight has given you the keys to run a campaign just as successful as Crown did. Follow their their footsteps, learn all their lessons, and reach their success as well. So gentlemen, thank you so much. Been an absolute pleasure working with you, and for sharing all of your wisdom with the world. The drum corps and marching band community learned from you on the field and off on a regular basis, and tonight is a perfect example of that. So thank you so much for everything you contribute to this effort and all the others. Brian, any closing thoughts?
No, I don't think so. I think you said it all. And thank you to the Carolina Crown organization, the board, the administration, the members. The members were amazing, just incredible group of kids. Would give anything to be able to go back in time in the way back machine and do something with them as a performer. But hey, we'll raise you money if we can't do that. But yeah, thanks. It was so much fun. Thanks for your partnership.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jim and Ryan. Good night, everybody. Thanks for watching.